Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next session in the Campaign Optimization Series. My name is Andrew Gaffney. I'm Editorial Director with Demand Gen Report. Really glad you could join us for this next session. It's going to be a great one. So as you've heard so far throughout the week, ABM is obviously a key thread among most of the sessions. A few of the points that we've heard, sort of pain points, key things that our readers are asking us a lot about in terms of ABM, in terms of getting it to the next level, is really being able to get that one-to-one communication. It requires much more of a sort of personal touch and context. And the other side is just being able to scale it, to be able to apply it across different geographies, different product lines. So those tend to be two of the top sort of pain points we've had, and this session is going to tackle those both head on. So the title of the session is 5 ABM Strategies that Foster Human Connection at Global Scale. We've got a great speaker, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Quick reminder, the series is being hosted by Demand Gen Report. If you're not already a subscriber to Demand Gen Report, we encourage you to take advantage of the great content we have. You can take advantage of a free subscription at demandgenreport.com. Also encourage you to take advantage and be part of the social communities and networks that we've built up. On LinkedIn, there's a group called Demand Gen Specialists that have a lot of great conversations going on there. We can meet some of your peers and share some learnings there. Quick reminder also, we've been having really good success in conversations while we can't get together in person so far this year with virtual events. Our next one is going to be June 7th through the 10th. Next Level ABM is the theme of that. So we've got a lot of great sessions that'll build on some of the topics we're addressing here during the Campaign Optimization Series. So I encourage you to check out the agenda for that and keep an eye out for some of the speakers, and hopefully you can register to join us. Also, a quick reminder that some of you lucky folks are going to be getting Grubhub lunch on us as part of the series. So if you were one of the early registrants and took advantage of that, 150 folks will be hopefully enjoying some fine dining as they're enjoying some fine content. If you missed it this time, try to get in early and take advantage of it tomorrow. A couple of quick reminders, kind of housekeeping items. This presentation is going to be just under 30 minutes, and we'll save a couple minutes for Q&A. Go ahead and type any questions that come to mind in the Q&A tab, and we'll be monitoring those. We'll save the questions until the end of the presentation, and we'll take as many as we can. If we don't get to your question, we'll forward them to today's speaker and ask them to follow up with you directly. Also, you'll see on the bottom right that there's an area where you can download some related resources to today's topic. Another frequently asked question we get is that, yes, you can go back and the session's being recorded, so you'll get a chance to a link to go back and review it or share it with your peers. All right, so without further ado, let me introduce you to today's speaker. Peter Murphy is the Global VP of Platform Sales at MRP. In his role, Peter is responsible for driving client adoption and solution value, as well as pipeline revenue for MRP Prelytics customers. He helps them work with their enterprise class predictive ABM platform and realize he's helping progressive brands and their sales and marketing teams guide them through revenue performance. He helps them decode ABM programs into AI and data-driven orchestrations, and he's doing that as they're spanning more than half a dozen channels, 100 countries, and 20 languages. Peter brings to MRP more than 20 years of technology, sales, and marketing leadership, and a keen focus on helping clients identify the connection of their needs to high-value solutions. Prior to MRP, Peter was a VP of sales at one of Oracle's global business units and held leadership roles at Micros, where he helped drive market impact from the earliest days to when they acquired quite a big market share in specialty retail. Quick background on Peter. He holds a Bachelor's of Degree of Commerce from the University of Cork in Ireland. And outside of working, he loves to run, bike, camp, and coach youth soccer. So, Peter, welcome. Really excited to have you join us today.
Thank you, Andrew, and hello, everyone. As you might have picked up from the introduction from Andrew a minute ago, I've spent the majority of my career in enterprise sales and sales management. So frankly, what interested me in joining MRP several years ago now was that given my sales experience at that point, I was looking to expand my connections and understanding a bit of B2B marketing. That was part of my kind of personal career development. So especially in field sales, where I had a lot of background, my own experience and that of my peers was that there wasn't really a good, tight connection between sales individuals that were on my team and marketing. The sales were doing what I would fairly describe as account-based selling, and marketing was doing, well, marketing. That's how we perceived it. So in a way, that piqued my own interest in learning more about ABM. So it's been great, Andrew, working with the Managing Report over the last couple of years. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to spend a few minutes with you all. And that intro might be a bit of a prelude or a preview to one or two of my points that we'll share. Seeing that, ABM, that is really being driven by marketing, but it's pivotal to helping salespeople connect the dots, making a relevant connection by understanding the needs and the timing of those needs with our clients. And so 1 year on, right, we were here a year ago, it feels like. This still remains the new reality. And while the shift to digital has created new personal and professional opportunities, such as, a lot more time in our homes and apartments, B2B marketing and sales, especially those working on large or complex deal cycles, have lost their most reliable engagement channel, particularly in closing deals, but certainly the many face-to-face meetings, the walking the halls, the event-driven opportunities, and so on. So this shift away from in-person meetings and events can help sales and marketing lower costs, extend reach, and ultimately improve effectiveness. But for many of us in sales, I think we all have a yearning to get that human connection again. I mean, I'm talking literally, I suppose, more than figuratively. And if I'm not mistaken, Andrew, I believe the Man-Gen Report can maybe comment on this at the end, but I think you guys are having your first in-person event in Boston, I believe, in August. So we're all very much looking forward to that and other events that are hopefully coming out later this summer. In the meantime, we recognize the Moravian research that goes back to the 1960s. And, in face-to-face meeting environments that they studied, they observed how much communication is delivered through these nonverbal means, such as body language. More than a third, they felt, came through tone and confidence. So when you look at that, like 90% or more of what we communicate in these face-to-face environments is without words at all, right? So a sizable percentage of this skill and message still gets missed in an environment like this or in a Zoom call. But that's not even nearly as much as our digital communications, which is now a mainstay of B2B communication. So with traditional marketing and sales models, I think almost turned inevitably, permanently on its head somewhat from where we were. Enterprise marketers need to be savvy about which digital strategies can help their goals and which inadvertently distance and disconnect them from high-value accounts and customers. The second paradigm is when we do talk about account-based marketing, ABM, the reality is that ABM is not a one-size-fits-all solution. And that works for the startup or mid-sized company, and that's not necessarily the same as for the enterprise. So when we talk about the enterprise, we're not even talking about revenue or the number of employees. According to Forrester, when it comes to ABM, these enterprise requirements vary greatly from those of companies doing business in one or two geographies, have a simpler organizational structure, or technology needs. The ABM strategy that I'm referring to here is that we're talking about companies with multiple product lines or lines of business, often geographically dispersed, operating under various brand names. So since the multiple product lines are often the results of mergers and acquisitions, it compounds itself. These companies often find themselves with multiple systems, multiple CRMs, multiple marketing automation platforms, multiple websites. So by definition, enterprise organizations have multiple sales and marketing teams. They're each focused on a product line, a business unit, an industry, a region. The sophisticated go-to-market approach creates a real strong need for ABM to be what I would describe as connectable and actionable across all the teams. delivering the need for multi-tenancy. Yet organizational silos continue to fragment the buying experience, and we still see product-centric go-to-market strategies across our marketplaces. So in this environment, enterprise sales and marketing teams, I think, have to be able to conceive, build, manage, measure simultaneous ABM programs, and that's the difference. So operating in the same platform with these capabilities, you're now free to pursue different strategies and plans. And then you can share the insights, you can share target approaches, and you can share the methodology for measurement. B2B buying is not getting simpler, it's increasingly complicated. You have more buyers in the buying process, you have more departments involved, the number of individuals continues to grow, and as is the number of those interactions needed to close the deal, even though we're doing a lot of this digitally. So when each organization chooses its own ABM approach and technology, what we're seeing is costs are exploding as teams battle their peers for business. And that causes mistrust within the organization and certainly creates mixed messages among target accounts. However, when we talk about account-based marketing and focus on the target buyer, the reality is the accounts don't buy from you, the people do. And when it comes to B2B, we're talking about multiple people or buyer groups making those purchasing decisions. Marketers, particularly the enterprise marketers, they deal with thousands and thousands of named accounts globally. They've long been tasked with finding digital means to create and develop outreach across multiple channels with a huge emphasis on top-of-funnel expansion. So where do the needs and objectives of the buyers go? The marketers have spent a lot of time and money garnering insights and passing it to a very willing sales force. And in the industry, we've been given this classifications with acronyms to prove that the handover is legit, like we've got from MQL to SEL, that's marketing qualified lead, to sales accepted lead. But like, how many leads are accepted and not activated by sales? Where do those leads go? I mean, it happens all the time. I heard, actually, Andrew, in one of your recent roundtables on human connections, a similar theme here, that one of the participants in that talked about reclassifying MQLs, if you recall. And that just is because we've got so much scale coming in from the digital sources. So I think the key here is to take a look at that scale that technology has given us and determine what personalized connections can make that emotional response to the buyer's needs. At MRP here, we do look at how we classify the MQLs. We've got a single touch MQL, a multi-touch MQL. An MQL with multiple touches, including an explicit expression of interest, is very, very different to someone who may have joined a webinar in error, right? So here we are. We've got 5 strategies that foster human connections at global scale to get into a little bit more detail. Enterprises need to simplify the complexities of digital interactions to foster human connections at scale. And just because the enterprise is complex and sophisticated, that doesn't mean that ABM has to be complicated. So let's go through these 5 steps. First, I want to start off with a graphic. I think this nicely lays out a simple view of ABM and a continuous loop of information that is needed. So on the left, you'll see we're gathering data. It includes, and we'll speak to this in a few moments, the different forms of this, but we've got first, second, and third-party data that helps generate the insights, make predictions in the predictive engine, and then take actions that result in more data gathering, which in turn provides more insights, which in turn provides further and future actions, and so on, and the loop continues. So these are the building blocks to a strong ABM foundation, and in our case, it comes as one solution, but it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, there are subcomponents of this in the marketplace which can be considered best in class, and that's fine. But the main thing is that you make the process flow tight so that the connections and information are as real-time as possible. Okay, so the first one that I've classified here, and the strategy, I suppose, maybe it's it's a statement, but I think it's a strategy. We've got to fight the data fatigue. So we're going to start off the conversation with data. And as we know, most companies don't lack data. In fact, most of the time, we have untapped insights, and we've got more of them that they will ever need to nurture a digital relationship. We've got accounts, we've got contacts, we've got leads, we've got information coming from RFPs, we've got client history, we've got site metrics, we've got news about acquisitions, we have funding, we have profitability, and the list goes on. But with that, for many of us, it all results in probably too much data from too many different sources, and we seem unable to manage the data. Now, I've spoken to a few prospects that actually want to take a pause in their data modeling because it hasn't yielded the expected magical returns of the expensive, if you will, data science investment that they've made. So some of us may think of data now as a four-letter word. You know, fewer than 7% of B2B marketers believe their data is complete and up to date, right? And 40% lack confidence in their CRM and marketing automation data. But marketers aren't alone, right? I think it's a broader challenge. Forrester had come out with a separate report that indicated that anywhere between 60 and 73% of corporate data is never analyzed. Now, maybe that in of itself isn't a bad thing, but another study that was found going back to late 2019 by Accenture reports that only 32%, so just less than a third of companies reported being able to realize tangible and measure value from data, right? 32% being able to realize tangible and measure value from data, which I find actually a staggering stat, but perhaps it's not surprising. I think for marketers, it's not a matter of volume, though. I think it's a matter of timeliness and quality. So in order to leverage this, marketers first, I think, need to take a step back and renew some efforts at a basic level. So let's start with the data that you already have and trust. And that's first-party data. Integrate and align all your efforts to that single source of truth. It allows you to actively create an account-centric strategy that focuses on buyer groups and motivations. The first-party data I really think is undervalued, and it's worth yottabytes. It's specific to your brand, products, and target audiences. A sizable portion of the data has been harvested from human interactions over time. Now, there's companies out there in the marketplace, such as Coveo or Enquero. Think of those guys as analytical companies, almost like an internal Google of internal data sources, who do a really good job at harvesting the data within your internal network. I mean, how many times have sales captured information in the notes section of the CRM that expresses the timing of a future project? It's simply a note attached to the account. It's not attached to a lead. It's not yet attached to an opportunity, or maybe it's being attached to a previous opportunity. I know this because I've done it back in times when I was entering this as an individual field rep. You've got so much of this type of data right under your feet. So we've got to leverage and really hone in on this. And while second-party data is verifiable and valid, someone like an MRP or some other specialized consultancy group will come to you with a unique value proposition for your industry, most likely. So it's worth exploring to see what else is in that data set of second-party data that makes it unique for you. I'll come to third-party data last. This is what marketers have been trained to depend on because that's what we've been taught, it feels like. That third-party data is close to being sales-ready, while in reality, it often contains the same data that everybody else is buying. And here's where I think we lose the connection. The context to geography is lost in most of third-party data sources, or in a lot of third-party data sources, and assumes that the intent data is applicable to the organization, when in fact it should apply to a certain product line or a geography or region in the organization, which you as a salesperson may or may not care about. So be sure that you enable and validate the sources of your third-party data to be applicable to the right region for those salespeople. The second strategy, build a plan to manage integrations. All right, so let's not limit your ABM strategy to just a few channels or silo your metrics with disconnected activity to your key environments of CRM and automation. Integration is the source of many project failures. Why? I think it's because a good part of the project is made up of integrations, and I would argue with the least amount of sponsorship and executive support. And in ABM, there is death by 1,000 integrations. We had a client tell us recently that they had over 100 marketing applications in their MarTech stack, with no one managing the strategy of integrations. The CDP Institute, from September last, outlined that the most important consideration in selecting marketing technology by far was integration with internal systems, followed by, as number 2, integration with external systems. And that's more important than features in terms of breadth or sophistication. It's more important than usability, more important than operating costs. So that means that connecting data from first, second, and third-party sources to form a central source of truth, activating channels, and integrating performance metrics for a full feedback loop provides us with a basis for machine learning and campaign optimizations. So let's do our homework. Let's find a platform partner that has a robust, solid integration capability, not just a connector to Salesforce.com. I mean, there's a lot of new data feeds that are coming online, and we need to get the support of our IT teams earlier in the program. And if you're able to build a plan that robustly integrates these data sources, we're going to find users much more likely, the sales users, the other marketing users in the organization, much more likely to interact with the hub applications that can pull and represent these insights in one place. When it comes to fostering human connections with your audience, not all insights are created equally, and only one point of view doesn't paint a whole picture. I think it's time for us to have more insight and control over the insights and signals that we can leverage and the data models that best fit our objectives. So Steve Casey, you may have heard of him, he's one of the top analysts at Forrester, goes as far as to say that the third-party intent data doesn't identify intent at all. And the point is, it's just third-party data with a sense of digital exhaust. And it's not until it's married up with the first-party data that I just referred to a minute ago, does the combined total begin to identify intent for an account. And that's because intent data isn't predictive. It's just the topics, we hope just the topics that your target accounts are researching, the keywords and so on. Yet predictive analytics doesn't offer relevance. It's the propensity of each account to engage, but to do what? So we talk about the buyer's journey stage. How far along are they in that purchase decision? That's why you need both, because relevance is key. And false signals from just intent is a waste of resources and a waste of money. And you're missing out signals on lost opportunities because of that lack of relevance. So you need to bring those two together. And bringing those two types of insights together, you'll get increased relevance. You'll simplify the complex because you're acting now with your active audiences. And you're going to find shortened sales cycles and improved pipeline progression, creating more effective interactions with your sales teams. And when it comes to the enterprise, intent isn't a company thing, right? It's a buying center thing. It's geographically specific. And it's not just in English, where a lot of the intent sources seem to be focusing on. So we need to take a look at the amount of intent that is coming from non-English resources, and even in those English-speaking countries. So be aware of companies that have great account match resolution, but their data is really only coming from those limited geographies. And predictive analytics is one of those technologies that really tries to extrapolate off those signals. An example of this, we've got a client of ours we recently launched in South America. By combining the intent signals with the predictive analytics with language and location in mind, they were able to orchestrate targeted and prescriptive ABM programs across channels in English, Portuguese, and Spanish across 10 countries, while supplying their sales teams with location-specific account insights that alerts them to particular products, services, and needs within their geographies, all under one program. So we are seeing a high degree of user buy-in because the solution is telling a story that is not disparate. Number 4, personalize the buyer's experience. Most ABM vendors, I think, prioritize 1 or 2 channels, and the decision of what content to serve across the buyer journey is often fragmented or requires manual operation and doesn't provide a connected or consistent buyer experience. As you can see here, even the average large enterprise uses 6 personalization tools, yet 86% of them can personalize across more than 2 channels. So in today's reality, one that is not yet without a lot of face-to-face interactions, it takes more than your off-the-shelf personalization tool to humanize the buyer's experience. Personalization in ABM doesn't refer to simply inserting a company's name or company name into an ad or repurposing the content of a site. When it comes to complex deal cycles, the emotional response, the personalization needs to happen across all the channels in a coordinated and orchestrated way. So that, and it's not necessarily easy, but I do believe that digital personalization techniques build empathy with the buyer. And it's a market that B2C, I think, has done a much better job at than B2B to date. But the B2B, when we make those inroads, I think we're going to see the benefits. So if you know your buyers and targets with relevant content and in a way that's respectful of their privacy, right, I think you'll earn their trust, right? So there may be a bit of a cautious approach here, but I think we'll earn their trust and they'll eventually give us permission to engage with them more directly in the following stages of the buyer's journey. No question. I think we've made great strides it's actually almost exactly 15 years ago. I think it was the June, I remember reading it at the time, the June Harvard Business Review of 2006, where it talks about the war between sales and marketing. We still got a ways to go, but we must take ABM to be a much more seamless interaction between marketing and sales. Beyond insights, we should be focusing on the ways that our sales team can actually work directly with the ABM program. Let's identify the points where the sales team can provide input to the ABM story and engage them along the way. So how can we work with them and how can we collaborate with the sales teams? I think some things that are very pressing, particularly in competitive situations, are, how do we monitor competitive threats? How do we monitor those competitive threats at both the existing clients and the target accounts? When we look at the start of the year for sales folks, they get new territories. How do we help prioritize their territory management? How do we help them score the accounts using the intent predictor that I just mentioned? How do we bring together all of the news, all the recognition, all the things that they don't have access to that we have access to in marketing? How do we inform them about, and how can we work with them about the information that's coming from our web traffic observations, the different types of MQLs that we're getting? And then how can they work with us in reverse and give us all the interactions that they have and the types of engagements and the types of people that they're talking to, the connections that they're making on LinkedIn, the phone calls that they're making, the emails that they're making themselves. All of that is part of it as a fuller ABM story. So there's a huge opportunity for us to do more collaboration. And it's not just sales and marketing. I think ABM today is a broader context, and subject matter experts from all areas of the business need to collaborate to make that happen. So here we're back again to this slide that we had at the beginning. Just as we discussed, data is what drives insights, and insights drives action. We talked about 5 strategies. Let's summarize them up again. So number 1, don't give up on the data. Put some additional emphasis on integrating first-party data. I think that was our call to action there. The second one was that we need to build a better, more sustainable plan on integrations, right, earlier, and get your executive sponsorship so that you can fund that. Third, don't use intense data in a vacuum. Use predictive tools to score accounts based upon relevance of the topic. The fourth one, we talked about personalization tools. So personalization tools exist. So now let's use them across all the channels where we can to provide a consistent experience for the buyer team and buyer journey. And the final one, my favorite, sales are raring to go. We're ready to get out there, but let's just try and help them make those human connections happen a lot more again this year. And let's find ways to help them scale, right, with targeted digital outreach that we're doing for them. So before I pass it back to you, Andrew, just a quick note again about MRP. In a market that's had many changes over the last year, lots of mergers and acquisitions. Just to let you know that we're a subsidiary of a publicly traded company, delivering account-based programs in multiple channels, multiple languages for mid-size and large organizations across the globe. Our focus is providing sales and marketing solutions for pipeline conversion, measurable return of revenue for both demand and retention units of our clients that uses our enterprise-class predictive ABM platform, Predicts, as well as our professional services team. And finally, in its simplest form, we simplify the complex. B2B marketers are trying to identify high-performing accounts, know what those accounts and their audiences respond to, and deliver that message consistently across multiple channels, and measure what it takes to drive actual revenue impact through each pipeline stage. And that's what we do. So thank you again, everyone, and thank you, Andrew. I'll pass it back to you.
Got some good questions coming in already, but just a reminder to all the folks in the audience, if you want to go ahead and type in a question, do it right in the Q&A tab. We'll try to get to as many as we can here. Peter, again, want to thank you for the great stuff. I think you had really good building blocks, really good blueprint stuff for how people can really take their ABM programs to the next level. I think some of the key takeaways for me were just around, obviously, the global aspects, language being really key. That's something I think a lot of folks overlook. And then orchestration across channels. I feel like a lot of folks in the earlier stages of ABM are just doing things sort of in silos. They think about direct mail one day and then they think about something different. So the ability and the sophistication to integrate across all of those channels is really powerful. So thanks again for that. All right, let me get to some questions here. We have a question, Peter, from Sunil. He said you talked a little bit about account scoring. He has some concerns that my sense is account scoring can be too simplistic in a way that gives false results, and sales may become too reliant on it. Any thoughts to agree on that, or any recommendations around that?
Account scoring, yeah. I mean, the first thing I would say is that an account score is a guide, right? And it's a moving target, meaning that scores will need to and will change over time. So I think overall it remains a very useful tool in making connections in general because it helps prioritize our efforts. And when it's laid out on a scale of 1 to 100 or something like that, I think people understand what a good score is relative to its audience or cohort. I think it's useful to know, even for sales, what makes up the score. So what information kind of fuels that? Perhaps the score is impacted by certain data that's missing. It could be good if the data is available, but having a context for that score, I think, gives confidence. And I think critically, the score has to take into account what I mentioned earlier on was the geography of it, and obviously the topic of interest. So again, the score is a guide. It's not meant to be perfect. There's going to be some details that are missed. but I do think it helps prioritizing, the efforts for the marketing folks and give some relevance to sales teams too.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Good question from Kathy on a topic we're hearing a lot of people ask about, the idea of sort of the cookieless world. She said, with the cookie policy changes coming up from Google Chrome and others, isn't it going to be more difficult to make a personal connection with buyers?
Yeah, I figured it might be a question coming on that, given I was talking about personalization a bit. So just to maybe give some context for some of the folks that might not know, I think what Kathy's referring to is that Google and Apple have made policy announcements to end the use of third-party cookies. I'm not sure if they collaborated on this or they've all come out individually at the same time, but specifically Google announced that it would join Firefox and Safari, the Apple operating system, in blocking third-party cookies in the browser. So I think this is an opportunity, right? And for us, MRP, it's probably a good one for us. I think it'll force an extra effort in the collection of first-party data, right? We talked about that a while ago. Because the more that you have interaction based upon first-party data and the interaction as a result of that, the less dependent you are on third-party cookie, period, right? So, and that should be the way that we're going anyway. Now at MRP, we're a little bit different, right? So, because we're B2B focused. So if you're not B2B focused, you would maybe have a different viewpoint on this. But our buyer, right, in our persona is not a person, actually. It's a group of people or a collection of people at a company. And as a result, the use of cookies is actually a little bit less important than maybe someone in the B2C space. And we're always looking to leverage identity engagement, like as we associate the kind of stakeholder to a company. And when it comes to engage meaningfully with the buyers, the changes I think that are being talked about would affect the early stages of the buyer's journey, right? As you go down through the later stages of the buying journey, I think the cookie impact is going to be less important anyway. And this is where, our ability to understand companies, the buying centers, with the millions of phone calls that we do, the millions of content syndication outreaches, the billions of ads that we're doing, are all orchestrating towards kind of a broader story. So we're not so self-dependent on third-party cookies, and I don't think people should be obviously doubling down on those efforts. It's something that I think we go back to and start looking at the first-party data again.
All right, great. Thanks for that. Question from James. He said, thank you for a great presentation. He pointed out there was not a lot mentioned about using AI. He said, what is your perspective as to whether AI is overhyped for ABM? In terms of getting close to one to a few. Any perspectives there?
I felt I deliberately avoided AI. I know I mentioned it a couple of times, but and I suppose we could have had it as a strategy, but it feels like maybe it is overhyped. Maybe it was a sixth one. We limited to 5. But AI has become embedded in our product anyway, so it's not the buzzword that it was 3 years ago. I think the expectation within organizations like MRP is that AI is really important for us to be able to scale insights. So we use it to help rank. We use it to weigh the relevance. We're tracking 150 million websites every day on a topic of interest or multiple topics of interest in multiple languages. So we couldn't do that through non-AI purposes. And I think as more people get a handle on first-party data, we're going to use that and help them to train the models, right? So that'll be kind of an ongoing effort. So an example could be, the characteristics that were in place on the deals you won, right? So think about the deals you won, what made up that structure. You look back in time, and then you use that as a way to build a model, find those attributes to those new opportunities that have that kind of look-alike. So definitely, it's not going away. It's not that it's important, but it didn't make the first 5.
All right, great. We wanted to keep the session to under 45 minutes, so I'm going to just take one more question. There's some we won't get to, but I will forward those to Peter directly and ask him to follow up with folks. Question from Eduardo. First of all, he said, nice call out for Yottabytes, which I'm not sure I even know what that is. But his question was, how long do you think ABM platforms will stick around before they get bought up by the big guys or become part of CRM?
Right. Well, Yottabytes, yeah, that's a word I suppose there was a bit of a bet that I was going to put this into a presentation, so the Easter egg, and now you know. Yeah, Yottabyte, by the way, is a lot smaller than a Google. Yottabyte is 1 followed by, I think, 24 zeros, all right? And it's used in terms of data storage. To the question, from what we understand at research firms, ABM is evolving rapidly. I think ABM is being talked about more broadly now than it was in the past. So I think we're going to look at that in a more broad context of account-based experience, perhaps. The fact that I spent a lot of my talk today talking about data, integration, sales, I mean, there's almost like a convergence of some CDP qualities and some marketing automation capabilities, but I do think it'll break out of solely marketing function, and clearly the most closely associated function will be to sales next before it goes into the general experience interactions over time. So, good question. Thank you.
All right, awesome. All right, Peter, you've done a great job here. Thank you so much. Thank you for the thoughtful answers to the questions and a great presentation.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everybody.
All right, quick reminder on our next session in the series is coming right up, and it's going to be on the importance of data across the customer lifecycle, so consistent with some of the points Peter hit on. You'll learn in that session how to ensure your data helps you cultivate engagement throughout the funnel. That'll be at 3 p.m. Eastern, so hopefully you can check that out. And then just a reminder to go back and check any sessions that you might have missed. Will be available on demand, and point them out to your peers as well. So thanks, everybody, for attending, and we will see you on the next session. Have a great day, everybody.